Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to us, or if you're watching us here on Twitter. Thank you for making the Sports in the World podcast a part of your day. I'm Ladarius, and as you can see, I have a special guest here on the show with me. She's been on here before. Big FanDuel guy, as you all may know who she is. And of course, I'm talking about the amazing Gabb Goudy. And how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Like I said, it's been a long time, and it's great to have you back on here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Always, always. And let's just dive right into what's going on with the NBA playoffs. Two games tonight. We have the Celtics and Bucks. They're Bucks up 2-1. You have the Grizzlies and the Warriors with the 2-1 game lead. Tomorrow, Sixers Heat, Suns Mavs. But overall, two questions. Who do you like to win it all? And to break that down even further, any surprises that have come to you thus far in these playoffs?
Surprises? No, not really any surprises. Who do I like? I like the Celtics. The Celtics are fun, but I think the Bucks are going to beat them. I think the Warriors are going to win their series. As a Cavs fan who has played the Warriors multiple times, I don't want them to win. It's not going to ruin my day if they win, but I would just rather them to not. I like them, but I'm still a little bitter.
Yeah, well, it's quite natural to be bitter. Oh, nothing wrong with being bitter. I get it. You know, it's one of those things where, like to your point, I really like the Bucks, and I think this Boston series, it might go seven. It has
Hmm.
potential to go seven because I really do like both teams, and I'm leaning. Yesterday I was Bucks.
Yeah,
Tomorrow I might be. That's
I
one of
said
the.
Bucks in five, but that was the first. That was after the first game, though. That
Oh
was
yeah,
after the first game, and then it got a little better.
yeah. You're like, well, like you know what?
So
Game.
maybe yeah, but I'm still gonna go Bucks. But I don't know if that's gonna how it's be. But we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. If you ask me now, I'd probably go Bucks. You know, because I don't know. I just like Giannis a lot.
Oh, I love Giannis. Giannis is so good. I will say, I used to doubt Giannis. I was like, he's never gonna win a ring. He's gonna be so good. He's never gonna do it. He shut me up real quick.
Yeah, and I think he did that to a lot of people. And
Yeah.
well, I think he did that to a lot of people, like myself included.
Hmm.
When I look at like Milwaukee, I mean, he brought that city championship like what, half century, and I think he's just one of those generational talents that we all talk
Yeah,
about.
he's very, very good.
And shifting into your point about like the Grizzlies, Warriors, like what are your thoughts if was John Morant got hurt? Does How much does that change the dynamic of this series?
I just think the Warriors are gonna win.
So
With or
even
without, I think the Warriors are winning.
so even with the healthy Morant, you just still think, yeah, you
Yeah.
just still
I
think,
mean,
oh,
it's a good series, but I still think the Warriors are going to win.
do you think it kind of elevated from this game possibly going, potentially six? This game could be going five if, like I say,
Yeah, that could definitely have some influence on that. But either way, I'm saying it's Warriors.
yeah, I think, and the thing is, and to your point, to kind of piggyback your point, it's not just Steph and Clay, but you got guys like Jordan Poole, and then you
Yeah,
had
he's really
Kaminga,
stepping up. Hmm.
yeah, Kaminga, like the rookies stepping. I think so. It's not just all about Steph and Clay, which
Yeah,
I think that's what makes it scarier. That it's not just those two you got to worry about. You got to worry about Jordan Poole. You got even Kaminga to it.
hmm.
Draymond, okay,
I mean, he'll do something. I don't know what
yeah,
he's gonna do, but he's gonna do something.
yeah, he's going to be productive. I have
Yeah.
zero doubt about that. No doubt about it. And the series, the Sixers and the Heat series, it's 2-2. Just very curious because
Hmm.
to me, I look at this series and to me, it boils down to and be it kind of it's very hard to break it down because I don't want to say they're even, but to me,
Mhm.
I initially leaned Sixers because I just like Embiid, who we'll
I
talk
really
about,
like Embiid too.
and just want to get your thoughts on that series and how do you see that particular series going?
See, the first two games, I was like, yeah, this is not it. Like, this is going to be bad. But with Embiid back, clearly they've been the more dominant team. I think the Sixers will pull this one out.
Yeah, and the thing is, I like the Heat, and I know Heat fans, and if they're watching, they may not like me after it, but I look at Embiid and I just go, and to
He's
me,
pretty
I will,
unstoppable.
yeah, and that to me, and I'll admit that I was wrong about Embiid with the whole Ben Simmons situation because I
Yeah.
always said that those two together cannot win a championship.
Hmm.
One of them had to go, and I went the other way, and the other guy made me like a fool, but that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Yeah,
But
that's funny.
it's like, ah, boy, I remember writing, and I'm like, this guy made me like such a fool. I don't even read that article I wrote you. I don't even read
Right,
it.
maybe just we'll go delete. We'll forget about that one. We'll move on to the next.
Right? It's like, you know what? No, people don't have to read it. I have to show it. So, and in the final series, Suns Mavs. I really like this series. I like offense. I have no
Hmm.
denial about that.
Same.
When I look at this series, I look at the Suns, who I like Chris Paul, Devin Booker, but for the Mavs, I just feel that if it's just Luca, I think Luca needs that second person.
Yeah, he
As
needs somebody to elevate him as well. He's so good, but you need someone else. Like in today's NBA, you're not going to go out there and do it by yourself. And I mean, like the
right,
closest thing we see to that is LeBron, and that clearly doesn't work. So you need someone else to get you there.
yeah, and that's the only thing that I say kind of stops me from going with Dallas because as much as I like Luca, I
Hmm.
like Jason Kidd, I like what they've done this year. To
Yeah.
your point, it's just in today's NBA, you can't build around. You can build a team around one player, but you need
Hmm.
at least one or two of those players, outside of the guy you're building around, to do something. And
Yes, for
and,
sure.
and, I, and I think that's a huge problem. But like I said, so I think we're kind of both on the same lines and saying we both like
Yeah.
Phoenix here.
Yeah, I do like the Suns here.
So I think we did pretty good agreement wise.
Yeah, for sure for those. Yeah, the playoffs have been a little, I don't know, it's been a little wild, I would say.
Yeah,
I think they're overly aggressive this year
yeah. I think you can tell. I think
from the
especially,
fans, players, everybody.
yeah, even with the sticking with the Suns Mavs series, even with the incident with Chris Paul, his
Yeah.
family,
Hmm.
and I do want to jump in and get your opinion on that because I have my opinion, but I'm very
Yeah.
curious to hear your thoughts on the whole Chris Paul situation with his family and his mother in attendance for the game.
Yeah, so I think it's so sad, they just went to enjoy watching their family member play a game. They're probably excited to be there. And you have
Hmm.
people acting like that. You should not act like that anywhere. I don't care how old you are. You don't treat anybody like that. Everyone's like, oh, well, they're young. I don't care. I don't care. You just don't do that to someone, especially shoving women on Mother's Day.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
yeah, that's
Ridiculous.
yeah. Shoving women is bad. Like let's be clear. That's
Right.
that's bad.
That is terrible.
And then you escalate that to the level of it was Mother's Day, and it's
Right
like,
behind his bench where he can see you.
right,
You're
and
lucky he didn't go into the crowd.
right, and I think he kind of tweeted out something to that effect, is
Hmm.
where essentially the league says, well, you can't do this to the fans, but these fans can do that, and it
Right.
kind of similarly reminded me of the situation back with the Mouse at the Palace, where like, well, Meta World Peace Ron Test at the time, he was just laying on the scores table, and then somebody decided to throw a beer, and then Ron Test said, "Look, he went up in the stands and he did what he did, and well, he spent it for the rest of the season." So
Stupid.
it's a so if you tell players not to interact, to do that with the fans, then in turn
They
the
should be
fans,
allowed to do that to you.
right?
I mean, they're
It,
not allowed, but like still there should be like I don't know. It's just a really difficult thing because I feel like fans I know fans get upset, fans get angry when things aren't going their way, but at no point should you physically harm somebody.
mhm.
Like that's just absolutely drawing a line at any point.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. I
Yeah, like
think. Go ahead.
it's bad. Russell Westbrook when he got the popcorn dumped on him last, was it Russell Westbrook that got the popcorn on him?
I think it was Russell.
Someone got popcorn on them.
Yeah, I
Whoever it was
remember.
like a
Yeah,
popcorn.
yeah,
And then he reacted and said something back to the crowd, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's being soft." I'm like, at no point would I ever want someone to just throw popcorn on me at my job.
yeah, yeah. Like, how would you feel if
So
working in a cubicle and just somebody just came and just chucked some kernel? Like, you wouldn't like it, and how would
right,
you
and like
react?
I'm sure some people would find that funny in some way, but like I'm like, just don't. You paid
Yeah,
for that also, so that's a waste.
right. It's like, to me, like, look. I'm 6'4". Like, listen, I don't believe in wasting food
Mhm.
at all. Like, look, like, listen,
Like the Yankees fans throwing the beers, what a waste of money.
right, I
$10 for one of those cans, and
right,
that's your choice to never go to another baseball game because you
right.
threw that.
It's just like, I never understood the whole throwing food, and I
Right.
never.
Like
I'm
Browns
like,
fans have done that, and it's embarrassing. We
and
threw
it's
this stuff at the refs, and that is not okay.
yeah, and it's like, you know how much that to me it's just a matter of you paid money to essentially
Hmm.
come and you just chuck it at somebody. That's a
Yeah,
waste
so
of money,
disrespectful. Disrespectful.
right? That whole situation is just it's just bonkers to me.
Right.
But before we transition to the NBA, I do want to talk about Jokic, Nikola Jokic, winning
Hmm.
the MVP once again, back to back.
Yeah, that was
Cool.
announced super early this morning. Some people weren't even awake yet. Like
Yeah,
people in Denver probably weren't even awake yet.
they woke up like, oh wait, what happened? Like, oh,
Oh,
he
okay. Way to start the day off.
like, all right, get their
I mean, I think
coffee.
it was very much deserved. He's very, very good. He carried his team into. If he won or Embiid won, or I mean, I would even say Giannis. I would say, wow, that's a great option. I'm not for or against it. I'm just like, okay, that's cool. I really do like Embiid though.
Yeah, it's a
Hmm.
situation where like I would have leaned Embiid, but like Jokic is not the worst. It's not the worst
Right.
selection in the world. It's not one of those like a couple of years ago where it was just I can't recall who won MVP that year, where it was just like were we watching the same season? It's
Hmm.
not one of those things. But I think to your point, I think you could have went with either Jokic, Embiid, or Giannis.
Yeah, like my thing with Giannis is I just feel like he is the most important player. Like in the like, I just think he's the best player in the league.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we go for like all the stats, all everything else, and then yeah.
yeah. It's interesting because, and I'll say before we transition, like to your point, it's like when you look at the MVP of the world, like who's most valuable, and it's like you can look at all three and say they're valuable, but if you kind of dig in deep and say, well, who was really valuable that season,
Hmm.
it's like there was a point in time where I felt like, well, LeBron could have won it every year based on the definition of MVP because he was valuable to, especially when he was with Cleveland, he was literally the most valuable player they had. And but now as it transitions, I think we're going to more statistics and we're digging in, we're looking up like VORP, and we're looking at wins above replacement. We're looking at, and I think it's digging deeper into the numbers, which is fine as
Hmm.
long as the eye test is still
Yeah.
integral to the game. Like baseball can pick up on the eye test of the umpires, but that's that's a robo umps. But anyway, but transitioning from the NBA, let's just do a little NFL. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. We'll talk about Baker in a minute, but just all in
Hmm.
all, after the draft is behind us. Just your thoughts on the draft and just your thoughts on the draft and the player selected by Andrew Barry
For the Browns,
for the Browns. Yes.
I mean, they're pretty typical of what he does. He goes for young, athletic players that he thinks can fit well into our system, best player available. That's what he's been doing. I feel like our draft wasn't that, not saying it wasn't important because the draft is always important, but their main draft pick would be bringing in a quarterback, which they did. And I
Yeah.
think that's where they like value their draft, basically taking our just a couple picks to get a franchise quarterback. Maybe we will see.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that leads right into Baker. And I've seen
To my
everything on
core, I'm a hater. I'm sorry. To my core, I am a hater.
to your point, and that's what I was going to ask you because
I am. I
I've
really
written
am.
stuff about Baker and I've seen stuff about Baker. To me, I guess the question to ask is, at what point did most people, people who probably, we'll just say, who felt like you, felt that, okay, Baker, wait, we thought he was
Mhm.
the guy, but what was the point where you're like, okay, this is
When
not.
I did, or when like everybody else did?
We'll
Both.
use you.
I
Yeah.
can do both.
When did you feel that, okay,
Um.
Baker was not the guy anymore?
Okay. See, so I tried my best to be very nice throughout the whole 2020 like the playoff win. That was awesome. I will never discredit that. That was great. It
Hmm.
was really cool to see because I've never seen one of those in my lifetime. That was awesome. But during that season, I definitely was still not convinced that he was the guy. My exact moment that I said I cannot keep doing this was when they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, like their first game against the Steelers. It was like week like 3 or 4, I don't know, one of their first games. It was on the very first drive of the game. He threw a pick six to Minka Fitzpatrick. I was watching the game in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the only Browns fan there. I said, I cannot do this ever again. I cannot keep going through this. And then the game progressed, and I don't even think we scored that game. We might have scored one touchdown, but it was very bad. And I said, I just don't think it's going to work out. I feel like this is how it's going to be. It's very up and down, and it's never. I mean, every quarterback has a bad game,
Hmm.
but the frequency of inconsistent games is far greater than a lot of the others.
Yeah, I can see that. Just to play devil's advocate, just to play the other side of the room.
Yeah,
Now, how about those who contend? Because there are still people who like Baker out there.
yeah.
They will say, well, it was, he didn't have the offense around him. He didn't have. What do you say specifically to those type? Because trust me,
Yeah.
they're out there. So what do you say to that contention that says that, well, Baker didn't necessarily have the greatest weapons around him in the world to
And
perform?
to that, I will say find a better situation for him. Find a better O line for him with two elite running backs or wide receiver. I mean, they were okay. We drove one out of town. That explains a lot. Everyone said we were going to be better off without him. He was going to be playing better without him. Clearly, that did not happen. So
Hmm.
that one just went out the window, that excuse. Then they started to say, well, our wide receivers aren't very good. I'm like, well, you guys told me that they were. It was just Odell. So my thing is find a better situation for that man to be in.
Yeah, and to your point, and sticking to that point, if you're Andrew Berry right now, and he's due almost $19 million this season.
Yes.
Now, if you're Andrew Berry, do you, the base of the reports, it's, do you trade him? But the Browns, would they be willing to pay something?
Oh,
Because
he already said, yeah, yeah. He already said that he would be willing to pay some of
yeah,
the
the
salary, but I just don't think anybody wants to have a rental quarterback.
yeah, and to your point, the only destination to me that, if there is a destination, would be Seattle. But Pete Carroll was on a radio show, and he essentially said that, he essentially kind of basically said, well, Drew Lock's our guy. He
Hmm.
essentially said that he likes Drew Lock. He doesn't see like John Schneider, the GM, bringing in another quarterback. So if you're Baker right now, it will, if it continue, I think it's going to continue to play out all the way through June and possibly closer to the,
Hmm.
until possibly there's a market for him. But my question to you is, if you're Andrew Berry, what do you do with Baker? Do you cut him? Do you keep him? What's the scenario?
See, I really don't think that they're going to cut him. I don't see them. The only way I would see them cutting him is if he actually shows up. And then I think that they would consider that. But still, maybe not even. They just don't have him in any of their plans at all. They don't. And it says a lot for like the Browns social media. They don't post about him at all.
Yeah.
Like on the draft day of his, they show picks from this year. They put all the picks, but they did not show the pick of Baker Mayfield. They didn't even post on his birthday. They just act like he is not a part of the team. So I would say if he tries to show up, I think that they would be like, hey, we got to get him out of here. We got to get rid of him,
Hmm.
which could be a way for him to do it. I mean, like for him, maybe just show up and see if they would like cut you, pay you, and then you go elsewhere. But once he's cut, is he going to be willing to be a backup?
Yeah. And I
Because I
think
don't
that
think there's a starting position available.
to your point, I agree. I think if we had this conversation maybe 2-3 months ago,
Right.
we would have probably said, "Oh yeah, Carolina, yeah."
Yeah, you would
But
think someone would take him.
and
No one's going to do it.
and I just think that to your point, like the more and more like I write about it and I talk about it, I just go, he has to. It kind of reminds me of the situation with like Allen Iverson, the kind of cross sports, and this was like later in his career where he was just a guy. He was just unwilling to come off the bench. He was used to being the starter,
Right.
and that was super difficult because he was used to being the guy.
Because it's not that's not the role that he's used to. And it's like an ego thing and it's a confidence thing. But at some point, you gotta know your role. And he clearly does not know his role.
Yeah, and I think to your point before we transition to baseball, I think if you're Baker Mayfield, I think you handle it this way. I'll see if you'll agree. I think you do show up to the facility, show up, talk to Andrew Barry, talk to ownership, talk to management, find a mutual, just find a way out, because the longer
Mhm.
this drags out, it just feels like Baker Mayfield it's just getting devalued and devalued and devalued.
Yes.
And I think if you're Andrew Barry, like you're like, well, we went out and traded for a certain player, and we went out like we essentially that was the proverbial, nail in the coffin. So we want to help you go somewhere else, but understand
Yeah.
the market's telling us,
Mark's
you
telling us we don't have a place for you.
right. So we can work. They don't. To your point, I don't think they want to cut him,
Yeah.
but trading him, you know, and if Barry's willing to pay the money, like where do you want to go, Baker? Because if you're willing to be a backup,
There's options. There's places you can go. There's people that will take you, but that's the thing.
yeah,
Are you
it's not.
willing to do that?
Yeah, it's not like a situation with like Sam Darnold where the Panthers traded for him and
Yeah,
then
but
like he came in and
he
started.
knows his role.
Yeah,
Sam Darnold knows his role.
yeah,
A lot of people like Jimmy G knows his role.
yeah,
Matt Ryan knew his role.
yeah,
So
and yeah. As a Falcons fan, yeah, that hurt. That still stings a little, but
yeah.
I'll get over it. Probably not, but 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 before we get out of here, I do want to talk a little baseball and talk about let's talk about the Guardians.
Okay.
As of this, as we're speaking now, they're 500, 14 and
Mm-hmm.
14, third place in the AL Central. You know, needless to say, like Jose Ramirez.
Oh, love him.
When you watch him, you're like, I'm glad they paid. I'm like I didn't understand the hesitation, but I'm
Oh
not.
man, if they didn't pay him, it would have been bad. Like if they traded him before the season started, they don't get many people to attend the games right now. That number would be it would be 1/3 of that, I would say. People would be protesting to not attend. They would be protesting the owners. Like I think it would be really bad if they didn't pay him and he ended up on another team.
Yeah, and I'm just glad. I'm just glad he stayed because I think it gives Guardians fans like something to show up to the ball game for.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jose Maria, like I said, right now, what he's like third in total bases, leads the league in RBIs. He's up there in home
He's on
runs.
an MVP reign right now. Like he's if he continues this throughout the year, he will be in this talks for MVP.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. And even with the pitching, like with Shane Bieber and someone I really like, I like Tristan
Mm-hmm.
McKenzie. I
Ah, I love Tristan.
like 24. I was watching a game, you know, and I was looking at this kid and like his frame and just the way his fastball. I'm like, nobody that size should be throwing a fastball that fast. Like
Right.
and I think to me, if you're like, and plus, what makes the Guardians to me a very good situation, a stable organization is Terry Francona. I think
Mm-hmm. I think
that
so
helps.
too.
That
Yeah.
that helps. Like I tell people all the time, like in baseball, managers may not matter as much as say as the NFL or the NBA, but when it
Yeah.
comes to like stability and you're trying to get your franchise kind of, you know, it's Terry Francona. Like look at the Mets. Like I didn't have the Mets being the best team in the NFL. I didn't have it. And I think a lot of that goes to Buck Showalter.
Right.
Bring in stability, bring in that veteran presence in the dugout. I think matters. And I guess to transition back to the Guardians, early, like I say, still kind of relatively early in the season. I'll put it this way. What's your prediction and what would be an ideal season for the Guardians this year?
Oof. So my prediction. It's really hard to tell you because one week we will score the most runs that we could ever score in a game, and then the next week we're gonna lose 10-0 and get swept. Like I cannot tell you where this is going to go to. Our our win total was set, like I think it was 75 and a half, and I was like, I might take that. I might consider that. But everyone's like, no, don't do it, don't do it. I'm like, oh, guys, I don't know. But I really still don't know if they will hit that because each series, it's a surprise every time. But if they continue how they did over the weekend, minus Shane Bieber, little mishap, we should be pretty good. Not good, but we will be competitive.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment because, like to your point, and a lot of teams are that way where they'll come
Yeah.
out there and have like come up there 10. They can easily score 10 runs in a game and they easily give up
Give
10
up them.
runs, and and
Yeah.
it's that fluctuation, and it makes it difficult because at the if you're the Guardians, I think it just comes down to the pitching, and I think it just comes down to the
Mm-hmm.
pitching because with the offense, it's more than Ramirez, obviously, but
Fanduel's starting to get it together, so I like that.
yeah. So it's not. I'm not going to put it all on the offense. As much as I love offense, I'm not going to put it all on
Mm-hmm.
the batting. I think, like I say, I like McKenzie. Cal Quantrill. You got, I think it's
I think we
Plesac.
have Zach pitching
Please,
tonight. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that the rotation's going to be the factor. I think if the
Mm-hmm.
rotation can be more consistent, because with the hitting, you kind of know what you're getting, but you kind of don't know what you're getting.
Right. Like it's a big surprise sometimes.
Yeah,
You know who's
and
good and you know who's gonna leave you with some guesses.
right, and I think that's why I said with baseball. Like I said, I'm a Cubs fan. I deal with up and downs all the
Oh.
time. Lord. I know. I didn't want to bring it up.
It's
Every
okay.
every time, and I'll say this before we wrap up. I always say this. It's like I became a fan of Cleveland, like because of you. Like you're one of the people, like I got on board with Cleveland because of you. And I think, and Haley Murphy, like that, because she's
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, I got on board because of you too. But notice, if you ever follow me on Twitter, I very rarely talk about the World Series. I don't talk about it because I'm
You
like,
should.
it's like I do in the back of my mind, but it's
But
like,
no, you should. If I won, I would be talking about that like no tomorrow.
because like
I would never stop talking about it.
it's the only championship I can talk about, because I can't talk about the Falcons because we don't know how
Right.
to keep leads in that town. So, but neither here nor there. And that's a place where we'll kind of put a button in. And Gab, before we go, can you tell all the amazing people where they can find you on social media and everywhere else?
Okay, you guys can find me, and it's the same across everything: Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at GABBGOUDY. You can find me there. You can find me on FanDuel. And yeah, you can just come talk some sports with me on the internet if you want a good time.
Yeah, and trust me, it's always a good time. We talk sports. We talk sports on there. And now that I've gotten permission, I'll talk about the Cubs a little more.
You should. Like, you know what? You deserve to. Falcons put you through a lot. You got a World Series. You have every right to talk about it. If I was in your position, in which I am with the Cavs because the 3-1, I let people know about it.
Yeah, and that's the part where I was like, you know what? I wasn't sure because I remember the final out, and I was
I
like,
cried, but it's okay. That's fine.
it's like
Right. It's fine. It's not you. It's not your fault. You weren't the one out there.
it's like, oh, and I was like, I remember the night, and like I cried when we won because I'm like, I didn't think I was gonna see it. I was like, it's
Yeah.
my kids will visit me
Hmm.
some point, and they're like, hey, great granddad, we did it, and it's like,
Yeah,
I'm done.
that was like the most Cleveland thing ever to happen. You win an NBA Finals coming back from 3-1, then you lose a World Series 3-1. I'm like, why can't we just have one thing go?
Just that one,
So
just have one thing going.
right, because we made those jokes forever up until October, November, whenever that was. So
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
And
It
every
does.
year, every Super Bowl, I get 28-3.
Man, see, that sucks, doesn't it? Because they'll never let that go.
No,
They'll
and
never let that go.
no, that's the worst part. And I think
Man.
the only way
I
to get
wouldn't
a
either, though. I really wouldn't either.
because they showed the game on TV, and I'm like, I'm not gonna watch this again. I'm like, I know it's gonna. It's like a book you know the ending to.
Yeah, but
Like
you
no,
just can't stop.
it's like I watch it. I'm like, I think we can still win this. And it's like
Yep, the big
then
surprise.
I see Tom Brady. I'm like, no, no, we're not. I just go back to I'll go back to Netflix.
That's
We're not
funny.
winning. We're not winning. But once again, Gab, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
I
for
truly do
sure. Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
having me. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for watching. And once again, be real, be you, be blessed, and be safe. And always here from the Sports and the World podcast.